You're listening to 101 Part-Time Jobs with me, Giles Bidder. I've got Augusta Koch from Gladie, formerly of Cayetana, on today's episode. It was great to speak to her. It was awesome to hear about some of the background stories of playing in both those bands and where she's at with it now. Gladie have just released a 3-track EP called Raw Nerve. It's incredible. No Cool List is the track playing behind this. If you haven't heard Raw Nerve yet, go ahead and do that immediately. Thank you so much for listening. As always, if you like these episodes, if you like these chats, please recommend it to a friend. Sharing truly is caring. And if you're not caring, then what are you doing? East London's Signature Brew have been brewing music-inspired beers since 2011. They've made beers with Mastodon, Idols, Slaves, Sports Team, The Darkness. And if you go onto their website, signaturebrew.co.uk, using the voucher code 101podcast, all capitals, you can get 10% off getting beers delivered to your house. So here's Augusta. I think this is going to be the last chat on 101 Part-Time Jobs of 2020. Thank you so much if you've discovered this podcast in the last 12 months. It's been awesome to see some of the numbers go up. And I say that not to give myself a pat on the back, but it's cool to share these things. It's cool to share these chats, and I love doing them. Obviously, it's not about me anyway. It's about the people that I'm talking to and the brilliant stories that they're giving out. So thank you again for listening, and see you next year. We begin this chat talking about Cayetana. So when it started, the whole thing, one of the things around it was that the other two had been playing their instruments for the first time on that band. Is that right?
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I had sang in like a ska band in high school, but I never played guitar until I met them.
It's so funny because the last time I remember us hanging out, you told like an anecdote about you had a t-shirt during high school with like a guitar on it.
I wore that to my first day of high school, like public high school.
Trying to, fit in with your people.
It didn't work. No, I made like one friend. I went to high school in this school called Poconos Mountain East. It's like 2 hours from Philly. It's like a rural, mountainous, like snowboarding town.
And were there shows given like the snowboarding thing?
Oh yeah. I mean, there was a pretty, I don't know if it still exists here anymore, but like there was a pretty big, or I guess big for the Poconos, but like a big punk scene. So I would go to shows like regardless of who was playing every weekend. We would just go. Yeah.
Did you have a crew?
Oh yeah, I had a crew. Just like 3 other ska fans that were probably, in hindsight, we were huge losers, but we thought we were cool. And we would just go, like one of our parents would drop us off like every weekend until we eventually drove. But yeah, it was great.
I mean, I remember at that age, going to a show was like better than a house party.
Oh my God, yeah. And then we ended up starting to go to Scranton, which isn't that far from where I grew up. So we ended up being at a bunch of shows with people who would eventually become like my dearest friends.
And we're talking about Menzingers and Tiger's Jaw.
Yeah, and like 3-Man Cannon and all these bands that now we're like I'm super close with. And like so our crew in Philly, like all of those people were we were all at the same shows, but we just didn't know each other in high school.
That's so funny.
It's kind of cool.
And were you playing music? Were your friends playing in those bands?
I wasn't like close with like the Menzingers were in Bob at the Saggets at the time, and I wasn't really close with those people, but my friends in the Poconos were in bands, like trying to sound like Leftover Crack type of bands. And I sang in a very short-lived ska band called the Blue Bananas in high school.
When I think back to my crew that was doing a similar thing, in the suburbs of northwest London, there was a lot of motivation because there were, in our area, there was like Gallows and Enter Shikari. Mm-hmm. A couple of those bands were touring all the time within a couple of years. So I think that kind of enthusiasm spread.
Oh, totally. I think it hit me, that kind of thing that you're talking about hit me more like right when I moved to Philly. And then all of these bands were like all living in Philly and really successful. So like that time was more of like, wow, this is super motivating. In high school, it was more like people just played at each other's garages. There was no like bands actually touring. I think because we were too young. But
I still think that plants a seed, though. There is totally. That, not to be a cliche, but that DIY thing. You're like, well, if there aren't any good parties that I'm going to go to, I'm going to make one of my own with my own friends.
Oh, totally. Yeah, I would have shows at my house, like the year right after high school, I would have some shows. And like, yeah, it was just kind of an excuse to have people at your house and meet people, you know?
What happened after high school for you then?
I moved to Denver for a year with a bunch of friends from the Poconos. It sucked. I hated it so much. I went to college for a year and then I ended up just moving to Philly. Because I had some friends there, and that's when I became friends with the Menzingers and all of the friends I have now, pretty much.
Did you have pressures of family kind of being like, do your academic thing? Was there that thing going on?
Not really, honestly. Like, I think my mom would have liked if I finished college, but not really. I just wanted to get the hell out of Pennsylvania. So I moved right when I graduated high school and tried to go as far away as possible. That didn't work out, but Philly was great. And then that just kind of became like perfect. It was a perfect time to move and meet everybody.
And what year was that then that you moved to Philly?
I think 2008. Yeah, there are so many good bands in Philly, and everybody, I think because so many of us that we met in that first year, like that 2008, 2009, since everybody was kind of from northeastern Pennsylvania, we all just hung out. Like, I don't even think we hung out with anybody really from Philadelphia. And then there was just house shows, like you could walk to or ride your bike every night, which was, it was a heyday, you know?
It doesn't happen anymore, does it?
Not really. I don't know if it's because I'm 32 now, but I mean, they definitely still exist. I've gone to a few like pre-COVID. I don't know. I have that thing where like, am I too old to be in here? Like, everyone's looking at me.
I get that all the time.
Yeah, people have they Venmo at the door. It's so weird. So weird.
Wow.
I mean, it makes sense, but I guess you can't use the I have no money but a 6-pack of beer excuse.
Totally. What can you trade?
I know, right? It's pretty smart.
Looking back at that time, obviously, I think maybe there are some elements to certain time that you don't talk about it there and then because it's happening, right? Mm-hmm. It's like the present. But looking back at that period of time, what was going through your mind? What were going through like your friends' minds in terms of, I don't know, what you were doing? Was it day by day?
I think I mean, I've been talking to people, especially in COVID, you're like having weird conversations about the past, obviously, like nostalgic. And I'm like, man, we were just insane, like absolutely insane people. We kind of just drank all the time. Everybody was hanging out constantly. I don't know how people had money. And there was just shows all the time, and it was so exciting because the bands that we were friends with were like gradually getting bigger. And there were so many people coming through, like some of the shows that happened at Ava House, which is where I would always hang out. Looking at flyers of them now, I'm like, that is insane. Like Hopalong and Jeff Rosenstock and the Sidekicks and like all playing these shows together. It's so crazy.
What were you working as at the time?
I've worked at the same restaurant my entire time in Philly. So over a decade. This is like the first time I'm not there.
Why do you think that is? Is it the people?
Well, it's cool. There's this place called Monk's Cafe in Center City. It's like an upscale Belgian beer bar. It has like this prestigious reputation of being one of the best bars in the world because we have like 300 beers. I don't know. It's insane. But the owner is just like a super nice guy. He loves people who play music. He's always let bands come and go. Like one of the bartenders now plays in Angel Olsen's band.
Amazing.
He doesn't work there anymore because now he's like full time with her. But like lots of musicians have come in and out of there. So I just never left because the money was so great. All of my friends worked there. Like a lot of people have been in and out of there. And yeah, it's weird because like honestly, that's the only job I've had as like an adult out of like high school.
And it's been able to be not too stressful.
No, I mean, it's like, it's always stressful getting your shifts covered for tour because I worked there the entire time through Cayetana. There's always that initial like, will someone cover my shifts? But it always worked out. I was able to, at one point we were touring like a ton and I was still able to come back and work, which was super nice.
How much do you need stability, and how much of a sort of like home person are you?
I feel like it's really changed in the last year or two. Like, I definitely chilled out on partying in the past few years, and now I really like being home, which is kind of perfect right now.
Absolutely.
But I got really comfortable of just being like going to work, knowing essentially how much money I'm going to make, and then being able to spend as much time as possible like working on music or other art stuff. So that's kind of nice.
I feel like that's so smart. And I feel like I know so many people, and I'm probably the biggest, guiltiest person of this kind of thing, of just everything else came, second.
Mm-hmm.
And I look back and I'm like, oh, that's probably a mistake.
I know. Sometimes I think about it. I mean, especially when COVID happened and I was like, oh my God, the only two things I do are work in a bar and play music. And both of those are gone. So it's like, shit, I should have finished college. Like, I have no skills. I've honestly never even had a resume.
It's easy to say about the finishing college thing, but
Yeah.
I didn't. I went to uni after the band stopped touring, thinking, oh, this is the thing I quote unquote should be doing. Even now, I'm like freelancer, ad hoc person.
Mm-hmm.
Like I really think that in England anyway, after uni, finding a job is so hard.
Yeah, I feel like it's the same here. And everybody I know that has gone to school is in so much debt. So thankfully I don't have that, which would have like crushed me right now. But yeah, it's complicated because it's like a self-worth thing too. Because you get to a certain age and you're like, okay, maybe am I too old to be like trying to pursue this? Or like I don't necessarily feel it, but I can feel judged when I tell people that I'm a server. And I'm like, fuck you. I probably make more money than you. But
yeah.
But you know what I mean? You still have that shame when you like, I see my relatives and they're like, you're still trying to make this work. Like everybody who's gotten the opportunity to tour, and like it is, even though you can have times where it can be really rough, like mentally, it is like such a privilege. And it's so fun to have these experiences. And even for like people like you and me to like have friends that are all over the world, essentially. It's like, you can't really trade that for anything. I have no regrets in like, I really don't have regrets in that. Like, I've been able to see so many cool things.
Yeah.
Just to be able to meet some of your like musical heroes, or like just cultivate friendships, like weird friendships that you make when you tour with someone for like 4 weeks. It's like, that's priceless. Even though you have those moments of, I think we all have those moments of like, what are we doing?
It's part of the deal, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
It's great. I mean, Menzingers are one of those ones. I mean, a lot of our friends in England, when they come to tour, that's like probably one of my like top parties of the year. And we all have different friends in different bands who we have that with. Mm-hmm. I mean, who do you have that with in Philly?
I mean, definitely them. I feel like everybody that I'm friends with plays music, and then like I'm trying to think like if the Sidekicks come to town, it feels like it's their second home. Yeah, there's so many people. Like, I feel like that music community is so tight knit that everybody just like has a mutual respect and cares for each other. Is
Sheer Mag part of your crew?
No, I wish. They're so cool.
They're so great.
We used to have a practice space that they also had, and sometimes I would just listen to them.
Are there different kind of punk circles then?
Oh, of course. Yeah. I mean, there's like Sheer Mag. I think they're like from Southwest Philly. I've definitely like talked to them. Cayetana had played some shows with them. They're like on a different level cool though. But they're really nice. I mean, everybody gets along. There's definitely like groups that are closer knit. And it's kind of changed a little bit now that we're getting older. But you have, even if you're not like close with that person anymore, for the most part, you probably have some weird memory of being like in a house show, bathroom line.
We know the same people. Right?
Yeah, of course. Because it is, even though Philly is big, it's relatively small.
When Cayetana started, I mean, was it like a practice with friends? What was the kind of first seedling?
We had met at a party at Eric Keene's house. And Allegra had just moved to Philly. And Kelly and I knew each other for a while at that point. And we were like, I really wanted to start a band, but I wanted to start a band with women because that were new as well. Because I didn't want to be like, I can't play anything, And I think we practiced that week, and I had to borrow like a guitar amp. And then we just kept doing it, and we practiced for I think 8 months before we played a show, and we kind of got pushed to play a show by friends, which was really nice at the Golden Tea House, which is my friend Ava's old spot. And
cool place.
Yeah, so cool. And so that was kind of we really needed a little push from our community to start it, and then we just started playing, and everything kind of happened really fast.
In those first 8 months, did you write a lot of the stuff that would then become those later records?
Yeah, I think so. Most of the songs, there was a few really bad songs that we didn't put on the first record, but yeah, we had written most of those early on. We had made a little dream list of what we would love to do as a band, and I think the only real thing on there was we wanted to be on Pink Couch Sessions. Do you remember that? That was my top dream. And maybe Punk News, because I think I still really read Punk News at the time. And we didn't get to do a Pink Couch, but if you make it put the demo on, and I was wow, this is insane. It was the coolest thing ever. And then Tiny Engines had just emailed us, and we were what? Running around screaming. Yeah, so that was really cool.
Did that change your idea and identity? Did that come into that interest?
I mean, I definitely, once we started, I feel it started so fast, and we just went full throttle, really fast, where I think most bands play for a long time, or I didn't start when I was 16 like most of my friends. So yeah, it became my whole identity for a long time, of just being this is all I do. If I'm not on tour or working, I'm writing, or especially because the second record we put out ourselves, and we went through the whole process of getting distribution and all the stuff you have to do to release a record. So then it was just full-time working on this. So yeah, absolutely. That was all I thought about.
I remember thinking it was really cool when you announced the second one on your own label.
Yeah, I'm really glad we did that, honestly, in hindsight, because it's so nice to, still, not that we make much money from it, but we don't have to worry about waiting for someone to send us $50. You know what I mean? It's just ours. And to be able to understand how to do distribution on your own and press records, learning the whole other side of it was so helpful.
There seems to be a lot of mystery. A couple of times in my experiences, we, hiring a press person, for example, who wasn't our close friend. It was they were a hired gun, which is kind of gross to think about, but it's what we did, Yeah. And I remember thinking there was so much mystery in it that made me feel really not at ease.
We did the same thing for that record too, where we paid someone to do press. I still don't understand that. I don't know what that means. Are you just emailing your friends? I have no idea how that actually works. I think that's the one aspect of it I really don't understand.
I've done press for some friends bands in the last couple of years, some specialist subjects bands, and it is who it's people I've met because I interned at NME when I was 17, and the writer that was nice to me is now at Kerrang or something like that.
Yeah,
I mean, and it's so interesting that, because I remember one of the bands that I got them a couple of radio spots, and they were just stoked, and I'm yeah, but it's not that good. I was talking myself down. I was but it is a fascinating and strange job, and I know some great people who do it.
Oh, totally.
And so I'm sure there is a reason for it. But also the other thing is that press in punk bands, for punk music, is probably a lot different to a lot of other genres of music, right? Because there's so much limitations to how many magazines or websites there are talking about it.
Oh, totally. I mean, I think that's the hard thing where when you're put in especially when you come up in DIY, or you're going to shows, and then you're introduced to this world, and then a lot of your friends are successful, it kind of warps your brain of what, how you can generate new fans. Because in my opinion now, looking back on all of this, I think the way we've been able to have people really like us is playing shows and opening for bands that maybe don't necessarily fit with. We've done some tours where people were why'd you do that tour? That's not the greatest fit, but those people would still come to shows. And I still feel that's the most effective way of gaining fans, rather than just because I love music, but do I necessarily read about it all the time. No. You know what I mean? Like I'll find out about a band from friends or just like randomly. I'm not, and that's just me though. I don't know.
I think the biggest vote of confidence is when your friend is like, check out this record.
Oh,
I think
yeah.
that's the biggest piece of press any band can get.
Yeah. Or like another band that you like talking about another band. If I see someone like, you know, talking about a band that I respect, then I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to check that out.
And Twitter is obviously, that's
Oh,
the place
yeah.
where this thing happens now.
Totally. That's kind of can be press in itself, I guess.
I say now, but Cayetana started what, in 2000?
11. Yeah.
So the internet was still pretty...
It wasn't kind of the same. Like, I feel like now, especially starting a new band, it's like, I think Instagram had just really popped off around then, because I remember one of my first pictures is of Kelly, but I feel like now it's like so necessary for you to like have a brand being a band, where like we didn't really do that. I hate taking pictures of myself and like, you know, curating this like image online, and I feel like it's kind of necessary to some degree. Like starting a new band is definitely really hard, because even though I feel like it's definitely different because it's not the same band, but it's still I'm still writing songs the same way, you know. It's just harder now. I feel like with that, it feels harder than it was before, just in the sense of the internet's changed, the way people release music has changed. I feel like maybe there's like people don't care about albums as much, or like I see people releasing a lot more like singles. I also feel like it's hard because we just put a record out in February, our first record, and then we're on tour for 2 weeks and then had to come home. So, I mean, we were on tour for 2 weeks and then had to go home. And those first 2 weeks, I was like, I don't know what this is going to be like. Like the record came out literally a week ago and it was awesome. Like it wasn't huge places or anything, but people came out every night and I was feeling really good. But now it's like, I don't know how to, I feel like it's easier if you're already an established band going into COVID. But since we're so new, it's like, I don't know. I'm trying not to worry about it too much because there's really nothing we could do.
100%. And the record's great. And at the end of the day, you just got to have faith in that. I feel like everyone, like we all do.
Yeah. And it's nice. Honestly, I'm enjoying just recording a bunch of songs during this and just like putting them out just for fun. Like it's kind of nice to just have this time to just work on songs and not really worry about anything else.
Do you feel like the pressure's been lifted in that kind of sense?
Oh, totally. I mean, even going into Gladie and trying to still do music stuff after Cayetana, I was like, this is just going to be, I have no expectations. Would it be nice to be able to tour as much as I used to? Absolutely. But I'm not going to put this like huge pressure to try and be like a huge band. I really just want to play music, you know?
I've been calling it Gladie.
Oh, that's fine. I think that's nice. We've made it up because we wanted something Googleable. It's kind of a hard word to like. I call it Gladie. People call it Gladie. Whatever. Choice is yours.
Thinking about a band name that's Googleable. I mean, that is so our generation, isn't it?
Yeah. I was like, I don't want something that's hard to find. I really just can't. I pulled that one out of nowhere.
Have like your lyrics, has the sort of lyrical content, because you're really good with images and the kind of visual side of writing your lyrics. Has that changed? Has your like process changed much between Cayetana and Gladie?
Honestly, no. I feel like it's the same. Like I've always written songs kind of the same. It will be like a burst one day. I'll just be like, I'll write this whole thing out. I can't really go back and work on a song again lyrically, at least. So it'll be like, if that's how it came out, that's kind of what it's gonna do. But it's kind of the same, and it's nice now having this time, because right now I'm in the Poconos where Matt, the other member and my partner, has a studio, like a recording studio. So we can just like I'll work on a song in my room and then go out to the studio, which is such a luxury, honestly.
So you've been set up there for a while then? Yeah,
I mean, Matt, this is where he works. So he has bands come up here and record and they stay, and it's nice. It's like in the woods. But since like COVID, we've been up here a lot just because it's nice. There's more room to be outside. Being in Philly, I still have to go back there a lot for work stuff, but it's just nice because we have a dog and we could just let him out, and then we could just record whenever we want. So It's kind of perfect. Yeah.
Has that put a like expectation on yourself to make songs, to make recordings, or are you pretty chill?
I feel pretty chill about it, but I like to give myself little, like, I've been trying to make sure I write a few songs and finish a few songs a month. But I'm also doing like other types of art right now just because I have all this time. And it's nice to do a bunch of things, you know? And then I feel like it makes like writing songs feel more like a treat, like to have other things you're working on too. But yeah, I always try to keep making sure I'm writing and finishing a few songs a month, regardless.
And that's such a contrast to having those years in Cayetana where you said that you were just thinking that was, you were thinking about it every day, every minute.
Yeah. And that was hard too, because at that point we were on tour so much, and I'm sure you understand, like, it's hard to write when you're touring, and then when you're home, you want those like 2 weeks to just, or a week to just be like, I don't want to hear music right now. And then you're like thrown back into working and your social life and your friends, that like fitting in time to write would be challenging for me sometimes. That now that that's not the case, it's just like, I'm just having fun. Like, songwriting has always been my favorite part of being in a band for the most part. So it's kind of perfect now that it's just like, oh, I could just do it whenever. And it's fun.
I think it is easy for bands to do that thing where they start going on tour and they get onto this kind of level where it's like, oh shit, we're actually doing that thing we always wanted to do, or, we have planned on doing for however long. And then all of a sudden, kind of, right in front of your eyes, but without you even noticing it, maybe you can't do the thing that got you there.
Especially when you start, like, definitely not knocking it, but I never wanted to write songs about touring. Just because I feel like an average person can't necessarily relate. Like, I don't want to write songs that's like, I'm on the road, that doesn't really necessarily resonate. And I've, especially growing up as like a woman that didn't necessarily feel super included, I didn't want to just write songs about that. So that would be challenging because that's your reality. And I can only write songs that unfortunately come from my perspective for the most part. So it's kind of nice to have that off that weird pressure of trying to write songs about how much you miss your real life.
I got caught up for a little bit in hating myself for writing, I did this, I think that. Yeah. And I look back, I'm like, that was a stupid idea to get bummed out about that, because I look at my favorite bands, that's what they do.
Yeah, it's totally true.
You see it completely differently when it's yourself.
Totally. I've been trying not to use the word I in songs recently. It's hard though. It's hard though.
Totally. I mean, you know what and these feelings that you're feeling, they're yours.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't know. I look at like Jeff Tweedy or Wilco or something like that. I'm like, there's not one time in my life that I've thought he's writing about himself too much. But obviously that's all he's doing, basically.
That's totally true. I think that's one of those like self-criticisms that only we would think about, because that's kind of what all songs are. Yeah.
All songs are about this kind of intangible thing that we can't really get our heads around.
Mm-hmm. And that's what's cool.
Totally. Yeah. We shouldn't feel less alone for it.
It's true.
Was Cayetana winding down? That was a decision that you made?
Yeah, we played our last show last August.
It's not long ago.
Yeah, so not that long ago.
There was a gap before that last show, right?
There was, yeah. We had toured with the Menzingers that winter in UK, Europe, and then we hadn't really done much after that. So
that was a great tour.
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, it was so nice because those are like Pup and the Menzingers are probably the bands we've toured with the most. So going into that, knowing that was probably our last tour, because we did know that at the time, was really nice. So we were able to just kind of enjoy it. Yeah, so I had already started working at that point, knowing writing songs for Gladie, trying to keep it smooth,
was there that kind of thing where you're like, I'm going to try and put things in place that are going to help it do the best it can do?
I think for me, it's like, because I really enjoy playing and writing music, I just didn't want there to be like this huge gap of like not, especially because I'm older too. It's like, sometimes I'm like, that clock is running out, and I like to stay busy with it, like doing different projects. I did the 7-inch with Sheena and Anika right after that, and like just trying to stay busy, because honestly, if I'm not staying busy, as far as music is concerned, it does affect me. Like I do feel like I'm wasting time, and just knowing that I definitely wanted to continue to do that.
I feel like, bands in the sort of wider punk rock thing that we're familiar with, you don't want to look like you're trying too hard or something like that.
Yeah, of course.
And I think people must battle with that, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think I've found it to be really difficult recently, because just the internet thing that we were talking about, like I have a hard time. Sometimes it feels really narcissistic to me.
Oh, yeah.
And I really, really struggle with self-promotion. And then struggle with being like, I have to get over this because I have to like tell people what I'm doing in order for them to know that it exists. But I also they're like, the narcissism aspect of music is so hard for me sometimes, because it just feels gross. And I see other bands that I'm like, that's kind of gross. But then, you know what I mean? I don't know. I'm very confused by it, because that's not really, I feel like, how we grew up to a certain extent with that kind of like, you have to be a brand type of thing. And that's why I'd rather just play shows. But hey, I don't know.
It feels emotionally draining as well. You're like, this is what you're supposed to be doing, writing the songs, not promoting it.
Yeah, and like having to like kiss people's asses. I don't know. It just, that always felt really gross to me. But then I see bands that I like absolutely love that are huge that don't do that. So it's just like, my whole theory at this point is just like, I'm going to write as many good songs as I can and not worry about that aspect of it, because I can't focus on that side of it. It would just be very like disingenuous for me to have a really cool curated brand, because that's not who I am.
Is it Gen Z? Is that the generation below us?
I think so, right?
They must be pretty good at this stuff.
Dude, yeah. And I mean, honestly, I think that I wonder if you've experienced this over there. There's like this thing I've seen online with younger bands, that there's like a confidence that is so cool, and honestly a great thing, because I feel like my generation is very like, I'm very like self-deprecating humor, that all these young people are like, yo, my record is fucking awesome. And I have never said that in my life. Like, and that's cool though. I mean, there's a lot of, if you're a confident person, I feel like that makes people believe in you. But that's just like not how I feel ever. Like I would never be able to be like, yo, this song is so fucking good, guys, but it's cool. I'm trying to like appreciate that things do change, and it's ultimately a positive thing.
If I see someone doing that, I'm like, that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, I don't dislike them in any way, or I'm not as disparaging towards them in any kind of way.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't even come into my brain. I'd just be like, oh, that person's really confident.
Yeah.
But the idea of me saying what they've said, I'm like, oh, people would hate me.
I would hate me, because I wouldn't. That's just not. I don't think there's ever been a time in my life where I've been like, yeah, I got this. Like, it just doesn't work like that.
Yeah. You can fake it. I mean, I can fake it if I need it. If I'm on stage and I can kind of get away with it.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
But that's because you got a microphone. I don't know. How did you feel being in front of a microphone?
I mean, it's definitely gotten better. I would have like an extreme amount of anxiety performing every show. Like there was never a show where I would go and be like, yeah, this, like, just ready. And then when I would get on stage, I would feel comfortable and I wouldn't freak out. Sometimes I would like feel like I kind of blacked out of like what happened, but I would always be okay on stage. But playing, there would never be a time where I wasn't like absolutely terrified.
Even at the bigger shows.
Oh yeah. I mean, it would be nice. Bigger shows would be nice because there's lights and then you can't see people as much. I think it's also easier when you're the opener because there's just less pressure. I mean, I would still be really nervous, but I definitely would be way more nervous when we were headlining. Just thinking about like feeling the weight of being like people paid and took a night off of work, or like, you know, people who have kids got a babysitter to be here. And if I let them down, I'll feel terrible. When like opening for Pup and the Menzingers, it's like, let's be honest, no one's coming to see Cayetana. Like no one, you know what I mean? Like the reason
Not true. People are stoked that you're playing.
Well,
People
they
are
were happy, but like that's not the reason we're at that venue, or you know, like so it would kind of be like, oh, we can just have fun and then like try. I always liked playing first or second. That was like an ideal spot for me.
And that's the irony, right? Because if you were just there having fun and enjoying yourself, that comes through. You know, you can't fake that.
Yeah, totally. And we would just have fun because we would just be like, this is whatever. Like, we're going to just enjoy this and try and get people excited for, you know, Pup and the Menzingers, which is very easy. So
yeah, for real. Did you ever have to go through that thing where you were like turning down tours, or, you know, people wanted to work with you and you were like, ah?
Yeah, we definitely did have to turn down some tours because we would do things where like ultimately I think it was really bad for us, but like do 7 weeks and then come home and then do another 7 weeks where
that's so long.
Yeah, where we still were working, you know, like we weren't making money, like, and it was, I think ultimately that was really bad for us because, you know, you hate to turn down a tour, but it's also like, I would be like, I'm not going to be able to have a job. And like, I think in the beginning of Cayetana, when we first started touring, like Allegra had like a actual adult job. She worked with people with AIDS and HIV and AIDS.
Oh, wow.
Like counseling, like a legit, like serious job. And she was able to make it work, but eventually had to quit that job and then ended up working at Monk's where I worked. But yeah, that stress, I feel like people don't realize how stressful it is when you're a mid-level band that isn't actually making a living from music, but you're still touring as much as these bands that are making good money. And that can be like crazy because then you're like, wow, I am like really destroying my finances. And you know, in most times it does work out because you hit that level of where you can do it, but it's such a fragile thing, you know.
Does that leave you with like the two choices of either go hell for leather and end up looking like someone who's in leftover crack because you don't have a home anymore, or stop doing it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what happens to a lot of people, right? I mean, there's also like the trajectory of sometimes you can be in a band that people like and then it falls off. Like the hype goes away, or you know, people are I think it's hard too when we do have friends that are successful where it just naturally keeps going up, but that doesn't always happen. You know, like you can get to a point where people like you a lot and then the shows are like getting smaller. And that sucks. Like
totally.
I mean, and that's the thing I think that I'm coming to terms with like looking at my whole experience within music, being like a fan and then playing it, is like it's such a crapshoot. You never know what's going to happen, and it could go well, it could be terrible. Like even just the humble experience of starting all over, and it has been challenging. But it's also just like at this point, I'm just like, I just want to enjoy this and not worry about that kind of stuff because it could kind of like eat you alive, especially if you're like, you know, it is your sole identity, which for a while Cayetana was for me. And then when that ended, you know, people treat you differently, or like, you know, it's just not the same. You don't have that same self-worth you did before. And that's humbling and like really helpful in a way of just being like, all of this stuff isn't necessarily real life.
Oh, totally not.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's got a lot to do with, like where you're living. I mean, obviously like the rhetoric, you know, the narrative is like, you know, Philly's an artist town or a band's town. I mean, is that true? In like, can you live not worrying too much about struggling for rent, etc.?
I mean, it's definitely way cheaper than other cities like New York, and yeah, I mean, it's definitely way more affordable. And I think Philly, the nice thing about Philly, even like getting older, and now that, a lot more people who were actively pursuing touring all the time and like really going for it have kind of just settled down into like kind of where I'm at of like, I would love to do it if it happens, but I can't, manifest this, especially right now. But like there is a supportive network aside from just our friends, like the local radio in Philly, so supportive of bands. WXPN, they like write about all the bands of all genres, and that's like a little community in itself. And I call them like the regulars. Like there's this group of like people maybe 15 years older than me, like in their 40s, 50s, that just like come to all the shows, and like that's super nice too. There is like a larger community outside of just the punk community in Philly that really do care about the artists. And that's kind of ideal, because in a lot of cities, it's very like super competition oriented. And I kind of think of Philly as like the Great British Bake Off, like everybody's pretty nice to each other. Like if you fuck up something, someone will help you out. Like nobody's shitty about sharing anything. And that has like, and that's larger than the punk community. That's just like at the venues that do exist in Philly that are like small, mid-sized venues, like everybody's nice to each other. And I don't think that exists all over, because I've played places where people aren't that friendly. And I feel like Philly, there's a mutual respect for everybody, which is really nice.
And that lasts longer. That's healthy. It's like nicer. I feel like we've probably in our own individual experiences, seen like the shallowness or the fickleness of how anything can be, right?
Oh, totally.
And so that must be like a real redeeming factor. You're like, we're not in any rush to do anything. We're here to enjoy ourselves, and we're here to work hard and to do our thing just the best we can do it.
Yeah, totally. I mean, even when you see, I'm sure it's similar over there. Like when there's a lot of benefit shows in Philly normally, and like people really caring about the community, which is nice, especially as we get older and we're like less debaucherous human beings. Like people just like generally like stepping up when it needs to. Like even early in COVID, like there were so many people fundraising and working together and talking, and that's really nice, because then you do feel like you're a part of something, which is ultimately what we all want,
There's we got some friends growing up who played in some straight edge hardcore bands after the ska punk bands, and looking at them now and looking back on that time, I almost feel like maybe it was a mistake to get pissed so much.
Oh my God, yeah.
I mean, I don't regret anything, but I feel like you can do your stuff better when you're not. But I mean, you lose the social side of that, but then you're just like drinking because other people are drinking. That's not a reason to drink either.
I mean, I think of those times as like highly insane. I feel like I remember once we hung out at Siri and Annie's, and we had a fun night. Like I don't trade those at all, but I'm also kind of glad that like that's not the case anymore.
At the start of lockdown, we were drinking quite a lot, and then sort of realized that actually doesn't make you feel so good after a while.
When you're just like by yourself.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we need some practice.
Right?
We need some practice for the big ones that need us.
True. Very true. I just hope we're all able to see each other again. It's pretty bad over here. I'm trying not to think, like I had a conversation the other day of being like, I don't know if I'll ever literally be able to go on tour again, just for how long it seems like this is going to happen. Like things aren't really getting better. And then like, will I be able to tour in 2 years? You know what I mean? But I'm trying not to even think about that so much, because it's just, that's too crazy to think about. And the fact that like all these venues are probably going to close, like a bunch of venues, 2 venues that we played with Gladie in March, right before the lockdown, already closed.
Are you joking?
Which is devastating. Like this place in Boston that I loved, it closed fairly quickly. And that kind of stuff scares me for just younger kids, because that's such a crucial part of, like, I feel like communities need that so much and kids need that so much. I'm just afraid they're going to get bought up by like Live Nations or big places, and it's not going to be the same.
That was already starting to happen, wasn't it?
Oh, totally. And that's the thing, that like these independent places were already fighting these huge corporations that, like, yeah, like a Tires Jaw and Menzingers are going to be fine, but like, what about these small bands that like transcend the basement show aspect? Like, where is that going to be?
And we touched on it with the sort of the partying aspect, but
yeah.
I mean, that socializing part of it is a big part of it. No one can deny that. I mean,
of course. And that's how you meet your bandmates. That's how you meet everyone I've ever dated, all of my friends came out of that, like the friends I've had for over a decade and for the rest of my life, I'm assuming, came from those shows. And it scares me to think of, like, I'm sure you've probably thought about this too. I'm so glad this didn't happen when I was like 21.
I thought a few times about that, and also when I was like 15, living with my mum. I love her.
Yeah, but that would drive you crazy.
I'd be fucking insane.
Yeah, it's scary to think about, honestly. Because even I saw this morning that there's one venue in Philly that is hosting an emo night, and everybody's just tearing them apart, like, because like we would all love to hang out right now, but we can't, and that's just making it last longer. And especially with punk people having ethics, like, we can't have shows. We can't. Have you been having like the drive-in shows?
No, but I haven't been to one, but I've seen one or two happen.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm hoping that by like spring, maybe like people will put together more ideas of like how to do safe outdoor stuff. Like, it's already kind of happening, but now it's going to get cold. But I think maybe people will come up with like some cool outdoor things that are actually safe.
Everyone's turning into the Flaming Lips.
I know. I love that. It's so funny.
That's so fucking cool.
That is cool.
I mean, makes sense. Fucking Wayne Coyne. All those drugs did something.
Yeah, it worked out.
He's a smart man.
It'll be fine.
I mean, I also think that something's got to give, because I mean, we're all doing our thing. I mean, I hope we are all are. You are clearly doing your thing, in the Poconos where you can do it. And I feel like something's got to give in terms of a platform of being able to share that.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously live streams is great. I saw a really, really cool Future Islands live stream.
Yeah. How do you feel about them in general? Like,
I think it is going to show the class difference between bands, because you need money to do that. If you're going to do that well, you need thousands and thousands of dollars, I presume. You can't do that with your friend's camera in your basement. I mean, you can. I feel like there's a lot of production value that needs to make something actually really quite good.
Yeah, and it's not as boring. I've watched a few that are really cool. I really like the specialist subjects one that they were doing, like just the Instagram one, because the group chat aspect of it can be really fun.
It did, and do you know, like, a few times it kind of felt like saying hi to your friend at the real life show.
Yeah, it was exciting. Like Jeff Rosenstock's one that came out on Friday was really cool, and that was fun because I was talking, and like Mike Park from Asian Man was in there, just like causing a ruckus, and that is fun. But I don't know, like it's not the same, obviously.
I don't know. I feel like I don't want to say anything if I don't have a solution to offer.
Yeah, I agree.
Which can be difficult.
At least we have the internet right now.
Maybe things will start coming back to like blogs and blog spaces, and people can start being creative with their space online.
Yeah, totally. It's nice to see how much people have been doing, though. That's kind of nice.
Have you had to use this time to discover much old records that maybe you didn't get time to?
You know what's funny? I have been making a point to really try and listen to music way more than I had been. Like waking up and just listening, because I was getting into a habit of listening to the news like as soon as I woke up, and it's just been such bad news this whole summer that I'm like, all right, I'm gonna listen to like records and really like dig into stuff. So I've been listening to a ton of Beastie Boys, like stuff that like just nostalgic stuff, but also stuff I haven't like really gotten into, like PJ Harvey. I've always really liked her music, but it never like sat and got really into it. And so that's been nice. And then just like kind of just like dumb stuff,
PJ Harvey's an interesting one because everyone knows how much of a cultural impact she's had, but I don't really know why. I haven't checked out the records yet.
Yeah, that's kind of how I felt. And I was like, so now I'm trying to make that's a perfect example because it's like, that artist that you hear a lot about, you probably like, but then you just never listen to. Every time I think like that, I'm like, I'm going to listen to it, which has been nice because it's like, it's just nice to like get back into listening to music again.
Well, maybe that's where we could end this chat with your top 5 books, records, shows. TV shows.
Oh, shows. Oh, yeah.
That have saved you over the last few weeks.
I've definitely
months.
I know. I've been listening to My Favorite Murder, the podcast, a lot. I'm obsessed. I feel like I started listening to that when touring with Cayetana. And I really feel like they're my friends. Like, look forward to Mondays and Thursdays. And I don't really even like true crime that much, but it's great. That's definitely saving me. I've been watching Lovecraft Country on HBO, which is awesome.
Haven't heard of that.
It's so good. It's like sci-fi. It's great. You should watch it. Then music, I have just really been listening to a lot of Beastie Boys. I feel like that's kind of my life right now. Great British Bake Off.
You into it?
I'm super into it. I got a KitchenAid mixer for my birthday. And so now my sister and I just send each other pictures of baked goods we make and then pretend like we're on the show.
Have you read the Beastie Boys book?
It's funny. I saw it at Jeff Rosenstock's house. He showed it to me. I really want to get it. I think it's really expensive. It's beautiful though. I really do want it. I mean, it's nice to listen to them too, because I feel like there's such like a freedom of genre in there. I don't know. I find them to be incredibly inspiring, and I love that attitude. They just have a good vibe.
I even think it's kind of cool and necessary for someone like me to read about the troubles they've had and the conversations they've had with sexism. Those earlier sort of lyrical content things.
Oh yeah, to like actually have to apologize for some stuff and yeah,
and be like, that's part of our deal now. We grew up with American Pie. We should forgive ourselves a little bit and like learn, basically.
Yeah, I feel like that change is coming. Like we have to be able to forgive and have those conversations as well. I feel like especially with like the political uprising that's happening in the United States, and I'm assuming all over right now, it's like we have to have these uncomfortable conversations and be able to say that we're wrong. Like, you don't know everything initially. Like, there's so much I learned this summer that I thought I was aware of, but I really wasn't. And to be able to have a friend that you can call and be like, just talk about it with and have an honest conversation, that's so important because that's how you learn, And
from the selfish side of it, you actually feel so much better for saying it.
Absolutely. Because if not, you're just thinking like, am I a terrible person? Like, how did I not know this thing? Like, it's our job to do that work. And we can also talk about it with people we trust and work through it, because a lot of people feel the same way.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people are worried that if they talk about it, they'll be made fun of, or they won't feel as educated as the next person, or something like that.
There's aspects of it now that are like, are you the most woke? Are you the most aware?
It's everywhere, isn't it?
And I think that it's great to share information, but it's not a competition. That's not what it's about. We have to like build each other up and positively want to influence each other, and not, it's not a competition. This is people's lives. Like, it's crazy. I don't know.
Well, I think that's a really positive note to end on, actually.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is fun.
No, thanks for chatting. So there's Augusta from Gladie. If you haven't checked out that Raw Nerve record, go ahead and do that right now. It's on their Bandcamp, gladie.bandcamp.com. And thank you so much for listening to this. As I said at the beginning, if you could tell your friend, if you could recommend it to someone, that's a massive help to me of getting more people on the show and keeping it going. I hope you've had a good Christmas. Have an excellent New Year. See you on the other side. Here's Koch Sparrer.
I've been working all day for me mate on the side, running around like a blue-ass fly. I've been working all day for me mate. Every bleeding minute I've been on the go, up and down the ladder like a fiddler's elbow. I've been working.
This is a Mighty Moon Media podcast.